Hello, YouTubers, MMA community, UFC fans, the fighting guru. What are we gonna call you guys? All the fighting guru fans and the followers. We gotta have a nickname for you guys, man. What do we call fighting guru? Name lady, you got any ideas? The fighting gurettes? The fighting gurus? I'm gonna let you guys put some in the suggestion. I'm gonna leave some in the comment section. Give us some good ideas of what we should use to call the fighting guru followers. Appreciate that already. Thank you in advance. All right, so now today's segment. This is a special segment. I got good news and bad news. Good news is you're gonna start to see me a lot more often if you're inside the Patreon and if you're a follower and supporter or a subscriber to my YouTube channel. Instead of doing like an hour or 2 hours long segments, I'm gonna break it up into separate single fights, so you don't have to worry about timestamps either. I'll do them one by one. So if you're looking for a specific fight, you just watch the specific video. You don't gotta watch the entire video and skim through it to look for the one that you're looking for. You'll just get straight to the one that you want by just clicking on the one that's titled, John Doe versus John Doe or whatever it is, All right, we're going to start with my, today I'm doing lock of the week inside the Patreon. So today I'll give the YouTube channel Underdog of the week. How about we go with the Underdog of the week? My underdog of the week is a pretty juicy sized underdog, and it's a lot to do with recency bias. Number one, they're not taking into consideration that, oh, by the way, this is a free YouTube segment. Nobody pays to watch it. Nobody pays me to do it. So if you can please hit the like, hit the subscribe. I'm trying, win, lose, or draw. My efforts are so that you guys can win money. And just like even it's like a gift. If somebody gives you a gift and you don't like it or you have no use for it, it's the thought that counts. They tried to give you something and they thought about you and they cared enough to do it from the kindness of their heart. And that's what I'm doing. So if you can appreciate that and if you want me to keep coming back with more gifts, bearing gifts with like underdogs. Last week's underdog technically cashed in a sense because look, I'd rather be the guy who picked the right winner than the guy who picked the wrong winner but won because of like some weird disqualification, like the Peter Yan. I in my bet slips, I had chosen Peter Yan. He was a confident pick of mine. We had him in a lot of parlays. He made a big difference in how our profits ended. We still made money, good money, but we would have made even much more money. I'm talking, if you're the guy who only betted about $200 or $300 in total wagers, you would have won an extra $900 on top of like the $1,100 or $1,200 in profit we made. It would have resulted in like $2,000 in profit if Peter Yan did not throw an illegal knee that disqualified him, but actually everybody knows that he was the correct pick. So the people that cashed in on his opponent to win, they can't brag. They can't say like, hey, look, I was right. I knew he was going to get disqualified. They picked the wrong guy who was not going to win because they just didn't know how to pick a fight. They got the incorrect choice, but by luck, they got the correct results on paper, which cashed in for them. So I still, for the long run, I'm a long-term investor. I'm a long-term bettor. I got long-term subscribers so they, I think, rather see me giving them the right picks than the wrong ones that cashed in. That's just my opinion. If you disagree and you rather be the guy who cashed in on the guy who was the wrong pick, how can you trust that guy? How can, just answer me that much, how can you trust the person who gave you the wrong pick but got lucky over the guy who gave you the right pick but got unlucky and didn't cash it in? Because you know that guy in the long run will make you more money than the one who got lucky that one time. Unless you're just betting one night, never again. This is a war, not a battle. Every event is just one battle inside of a big war. and we care about the war. Nobody is going to remember just one battle. They're not going to remember you for the battle. They're going to remember you for who won the war, right? It's just like a title fight. There's 5 rounds. Even if you won one round impressively, who cares? If you're going to brag about that round, but you lost the other 4 rounds, that means you lost the war. Who cares about that round? What are you gonna? How much can you do of bragging, and how much water will that hold if you lost the war? That battle doesn't matter so much at that point. Same thing, same concept. We are in huge profits. I can account for more than 2. Actually, it was closer to 3. For every losing bet slip. If you're in the Patreon, or if you're not in the Patreon, you just want to see it, you can direct message me and I'll show them to you. Every losing bet slip, there are 3 winning bet slips I can show you for every losing bet slip. And that means, because each bet slip, when you're a parlay heavy type of a bettor, all my bets, 90% of my bets, sometimes 100% of my bets in a Patreon are parlays. That means I'm getting plus money on all of my bets. Therefore, is the reason why even if I only cashed in 40% of my bets, so I got 60% of my bets not to cash in. So if I made like 100 bets and only 40 of them cashed in, the 60 didn't, I would make profit, because on average my bets pay 4 to 1, 3 to 1, 5 to 1. I've had 8 to 1. So when you're paying between 4 and 8 times my money, I don't have to even get half of my bets right to cash in profits. But the good thing is we average over 90% of our bets. So can you imagine what the profits are like at the end of the night? That's why we turn 100 into 500, 600. We turn 300 into 900. On a bad day, we multiply by 3 times. On the worst days, we break even. But that's rarely, seldom that happens. That's got to take a combination of 2 broken legs, a robbery. It's got to take a lot of bad luck and weird freak accidents in one night for us to break even. Even with all the craziness that happened, we didn't lose all of our money. Especially because I made an audible play. Anytime I notice that there's something bad happening, that's another perk of the Patreon you can ask all the members about. Nobody else I know that does this. They give you bet slips and that's it. Good luck. Sayonara. See you on the next one, right? Not the Fighting Guru. The Fighting Guru is there step by step. If something goes wrong with your bet slip, you can look into the Patreon. A minute later, there's a post saying, hey, there's an audible. I know that something went wrong, so here, you could do this now to make up for that bad play, that something robberies or fluke knockout. Somebody was winning the fight, the Chris Ulberg fight, for example. He was up 200 strikes to 30, and he was 10-8 round, winning each round, but then got knocked out. So, things like that can happen. It's the fight game, the hurt game they call it, because, sometimes results are not they're going to hurt because you can't predict everything that is possible. You could predict who's the better fighter, who's supposed to win, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be the scenario. For example, Peter Yan, as we just mentioned. Anyway, so that's another perk. We do audibles every week. Every time I make sure, like that Michelle Pereira fight, even when we're in the profits, I made an audible play to say, hey, Jose Aldo and Michelle Pereira versus Chaos Williams and Jose Aldo versus Cheeto. You can bet the house, bet the farm, put all your profits, your winnings. I made a post in the middle of the event. While the event was already started, before the fights came on, I said, these are my most 2 confident picks left inside the event. You can go all in on them. And guess what? Members put all their profits, they reinvested it, recycled their money onto those bets, and they came out with even bigger money than the bet slips would have made them if I wasn't going above and beyond what most people do for their members. All right, the underdog of the week. I'm very confident in this pick because I studied the same reason why I got the last week's underdog correct, and he was a plus 185, and the prop bet that went with it was plus 410 or plus 415. It was over plus 400 prop bet, which I predicted to come true, and I knew it was no doubt about it was going to come true. I didn't even have to hedge. Usually people would hedge like grant but by knockout in case it doesn't go that way. I didn't even tell them to hedge. I just went with one possible scenario because I know this guy this fight was important to him. He had the better cardio. He had the better wrestling. He had the better timing. He had the better precision striking. There was too many things that were at his advantage. So I picked an underdog that got robbed. One of the biggest robberies of the century, maybe of all time in the history of robberies. If anybody can, MMA Junkie scored it 30-27, okay? For our guy who they robbed, they said won all 3 rounds. So it was 30-27. The unofficial judges, 100% of the unofficial outside the ring judges all scored it 30-27, right? Because there was one round that he could even argue was a 10-8 round. The last round, had there been more time, a few more seconds, he could have even submitted Grant. So how the heck can you say that he lost that round and the other rounds? Unbelievable that they gave him that type of a robbery. I've never seen. I even had somebody in the Patreon say that I've never checked off a ticket that didn't get called off in the decisions yet, because I always expect something bad can happen. But this was a one time in my life I never thought that could be possible. So I already checked that the Sukalik had won. I don't blame him, because even when I heard people say it was a robbery, because I was a little bit late, I didn't have to even wait for the decisions. I assumed he had won. I thought they were playing a prank. I never thought that before. I thought there's no way. There's no way you could justify somebody who got out-volumed in significant strikes, out-volumed in control time, out-positioned. He ended almost every round. At least 2 rounds, I remember he ended in top dominating position. He's the only one that got takedowns. He's the only one with control time. He's the only one with submission attempts. And I know at least in 1 or 2 of the rounds, he got more volume as well. But in all 3 rounds, more significant strikes. How? What is there left? Did I miss? Is there like a different category? Like magic points you can occur that are more important than 99% of the other categories? I mean, what is that one thing that they could have given him? There was no damage done. He hardly touched the guy. He was so gassed out, he was rendered useless. So it was the rightful winner, Sukalik, had got robbed, but that was my underdog. You can't blame me for picking him. You all saw he had won the fight clearly, decisively. Sorry if the results didn't reflect that, but that's not my control. That's the cricket judging, and I already even made a post in the Patreon that Jacksonville is known for cricket judging, very atrocious, the most horrendous judging I've ever seen. I said it was from Jacksonville, and I even gave them the names of the judges. So I don't know how much more better I can get at trying to prevent something like this from happening, but hopefully that'll help you guys in the future. All right, my underdog of the week for this week, and I'm the underdog king. If you know anything about me, my accuracy, we've already done it on paper. I showed you I'm batting at like 90% for underdogs. I think my underdog accuracy is even better than my favorites accuracy. I'd hardly ever get these wrong because I study the styles really well. I'm very good at comparing styles and tell you what's going to happen. Like the Rodolfo Vieira. I didn't just say Rodolfo was going to lose. I said he was going to shoot in for a sloppy takedown because he gets gassed out and he doesn't feel comfortable on the feet. And if you know anything about Fluffy Hernandez, he's great at snatching up necks. He tries to put you in a submission every time you shoot in for a takedown. He's going to try to submit you in a guillotine. So it was inevitable. That's the only thing I kept seeing and imagining would happen. I even posted it on my Twitter. The timestamps shows that it was 3 weeks before the fight even aired. It was around the time they announced the fight. People were posting about it, that it was announced. 3 or 4 weeks. I told everybody, I hate to be the guy who tells you Santa Claus ain't real, but Rodolfo's a hype train that's going to get derailed. He's a bust. And after shooting in for desperate takedowns, watch how quick his neck gets snatched up and he gets put to sleep. Those are, you can quote my words. I said put to sleep. So I predicted it exactly how it happened. That was a plus 1,500 or 1,800 prop bet. Anyway, So I do that a lot, man. Michael Chandler's against the hooker underdog, the Chiesa, Magny. I predict underdogs very well, not just how they're who's gonna win, but how they're gonna win. This is no different. This is what I can imagine for this week's underdog. He's paying pretty nice price. The underdog here is paying. 1 second. So sorry about the skip. We had to skip for a few seconds because my video stopped recording, and now I have to resume back again. I apologize about the delay. So the video was in the middle of, I was talking about how my ability to dissect the fighting aspects so thoroughly and so deep into, like, I go so hard and dive so deep into the fighting styles and aspects that I usually don't just tell you which underdogs are going to win, but I tell you how they're going to win, because I've played the fight over in my head already. So when I seen submission attempts and even successful ones in the regional scene from Anthony Fluffy Hernandez by somebody had shot in for a sloppy takedown and was unsuccessful and ends up getting their necks snatched up and put to sleep. That's why I said it in my Twitter posts before. I said, I hate to be the guy who ruins Christmas and tells you Santa Claus ain't real or the tooth fairy don't exist. But this is another one of those cases where I'm going to blow your burst your bubble and tell you Rodolfo ain't who you guys think he is. He's not the black belt hunter. He's not even the blue belt hunter, because he's got no cardio, and he's a guy who really practiced with the gi more than anything else. And this is not the same type of a fight where you're, it's not an MMA, it's an MMA fight, not a jiu-jitsu grappling tournament with the gi on or nothing crazy like that. So I said that this was a recipe for disaster. Don't bet on him. We even had a prop bet for plus 1,500 or something like that cashed in, because he put him to sleep. Exactly what my words were. I said he's going to shoot in for a sloppy takedown after getting picked apart, lit up like a Christmas tree. Then he'll shoot in for a takedown. He'll get his neck snatched up and put to sleep. Exact words. That was my quote about Rodolfo Vieira. Same thing goes with this guy, man. I already envisioned this fight in my head. My underdog of the week should be the favorite. He's a guy who's very calculated. He's in love with video games. He plays a lot of video games, similar to like Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker. You'll notice Dominick Reyes, all those guys who are video game heads. They love playing video games. They're very precision, good timing. Like, they don't like to make mistakes. They're very anal about how they're selecting their shots. They don't make sloppy mistakes. They're not wild men who just let caution to the wind and let loose and make mistakes that people capitalize on. These are more calculated, patient type of a striking fighter. As you'll notice, that they're very disciplined and very accurate, like the Israel Adesanya. So again, as another person who's a big video gamer, you'll notice they have a lot of things in common. So he's the type that, he had the recency bias is the reason why he's a big underdog right now against Andreas Michailidis. And Michailidis is also, he's known as a Spartan, the nickname Spartan. He's 12-4. He's also had no luck in the UFC, but the difference between him and the underdog who I'm picking to win, and remember, I'm the underdog king. Nobody's ever had accuracy, over 90% in accuracy with just underdogs alone. The reason why is because he had his loss his first loss came by something so silly that showed he's got bad IQ and no heart. He had leaned against a cage after the bell rung, the first round was over. He was trying to lean his back against a cage. He didn't realize that the cage part that it was just weird bad luck. The area of where he was trying to lean back on was the same area where they opened the door for the cage. So somebody had opened the door. He didn't realize that the door was open and that there was nothing behind him. So he tried to lean back and it looked like he got dizzy and fell. So the referee got confused and worried. He called the fight off. The guy didn't even protest. He didn't even say, hey, I'm okay. No, don't do it. Showed he has no heart, no IQ, didn't even realize what was behind him. It was just sloppy. He was trying to even stop the fight before that happened. He was trying his best to do an Oscar-worthy performance and pretend like he was getting hit in the back of the head. He tried a Usman versus Kobe Covington performance when, he needed extra 5 minutes, or Peter Yan performance versus, Aljamain Sterling performance. He tried it because you know why? He has only enough cardio with his physique, especially the way he's built and the way he fights. He overexerts himself. He does crazy spinning techniques, which for a guy who's an opportunist striker, KB Buller is a guy who waits for things like this. He's a black belt BJJ champion. He's a BJJ specialist. He's a judo specialist. He's a black belt in judo, taekwondo, BJJ. Trains with some of the best UFC fighters. He's got on his corner. He even been cornered by some old school UFC veterans. He's been training alongside with these guys for over a decade. So he may be new. He may be green in the ring, in the octagon, but he's not green to the MMA game. He's been fighting with and side by side and sparring and training with the best people in Canada. Canada's the best gym. I forgot what it's called. The Bush, something like that. I don't remember what it's called. He trains out of there with some of the best people. He moves to more than one training camp as well. He does have more than one training camp he moves from. And he gets, a lot of good eyes. He also goes to Hayabusa, something I forgot what it's called. But he gets a lot of time. He's the kind of guy, when during the time that the gyms were supposed to be closed and nobody was supposed to be in the gyms, during the pandemic, they were shut down, he would sneak into the gym and get some time and train that way. So he's very highly motivated. He's very sophisticated. He's got good IQ, good cardio. He's going to have way better cardio. And being a judo guy against the guy who's primarily kicking in his fight, this guy does more kicks. That's his go-to. He throws more kicks in his fights, high kicks, low kicks, spinning kicks. It's just in the lower levels when you're fighting a guy. His first fight was against an 18-year-old kid. His first win was against a kid who was 18 years old, 1-1 record. He didn't even have manpower yet. He was such a little small kid compared to a grown man. It was a mismatch. The referee had to stop the fight before it even got dangerous for him. It was such an early stoppage. Made no sense to me, but that just goes to show the level of competition that he's been facing is nowhere near this level. Even the guy he lost to, Modestas Bacchus, we just made a killing off of fading. We just faded Bacchus against that guy who just beat him. It was a kind of a close fight somewhat, but not really. But we just made some money off of fading against Bacchus. And Bacchus had defeated him in the first round by elbows. He didn't want to get up. He tried to pretend like he couldn't continue, and it was illegal. He did everything he can to try to get out of that fight. It was his debut match. And he was an underdog against Bacchus, who was also a debut match, who had never had a win in the UFC, and you're already an underdog against a new Bacchus. That just goes to show why you have no business being a favorite. Because recency bias, Tom Breese is not the same type of a fighter like Bacchus. But Bacchus, don't compare Bacchus loss to a Tom Breese loss. Tom Breese on his best days, he's a world beater. That guy's a trained killer. He's a sniper. He's a great fighter. He's got a great jab, great footwork, great wrestling, great submission game, great movement, huge power. The guy doesn't even belong in that weight class. That day that he walked into that octagon, he looked 3 weight classes bigger than KB Buller. You could see the difference. It looked like a heavyweight versus a featherweight. Not even close in the sizes. One guy was way too big for the division. The other guy was way too small. It was not a good matchup. It was a bad match. You got a short end of the stick. That's not the kind of a fight you want to debut in with the jitters, UFC jitters, the butterflies, the pressure from being your first debut fight. That was not a fair matchup. It was a mismatch in physicality and experience and comfortability. Because I don't care how many years, who you've trained with, who you've been cornered by, how best the trainers, you have the best trainers in the world. Until you get some hours into the cage, time in the cage spent inside the actual fighting cage, your striking will never be perfect. You're never going to develop striking skills to be good enough to hang with the best of them until you can put the hours in, the time on the actual cage. The rounds, if you can get the rounds in, that's different. But this guy hadn't had a chance yet. He did not belong. They should not have matched him up with a guy like that. He was undefeated. He only has one loss right now because of that, because the matchmakers didn't know what they were doing that day. It was not a fair fight, not just in physicality and size-wise. But this is different. This guy lost to Prochazka because he gave up. He showed bad IQ, leaning down like why the round is over. Get up and go to your corner, sit on your stool. What are you leaning against the cage for? Especially a cage that doesn't exist. There is no cage there. He leaned it back against nothing. He fell down. He deserved to lose that fight. Even sitting there and getting elbow after elbow after. Did you see the size of his head? He had a big whelp on his head and it was red and he looked so much combobulated because of it. He didn't want to continue and he doesn't have the cardio to continue. The way he fights, forget the sloppy techniques. I've seen him fall down by himself. But luckily, he was fighting against low-level guys who didn't know how to capitalize on it. But this is a guy who only works to capitalize. You can't do that against a Brees. If your game plan is to wait for Brees to make a mistake, your mistake already was to go into with that game plan. That was your first mistake, actually, is to wait for... Brees is a guy you got to pressure him. You got to put a jab in his face, like Strickland. Strickland beat Brees because he was bullying him around. He was controlling the middle of the octagon and forward walking him down. You can't just let him wait, be patient, and wait for him to select his shots and get comfortable. Brees is too good of a fighter he's not going to make a mistake so silly like that you can capitalize and finish him with. That's not the kind of a fighter you're fighting against, Brees. And that's the kind of guys he was used to putting away with his undefeated record. So he didn't have the time and experience yet to know how to match up against a guy like that. So, again, mismatch in sizes, especially, it was not in his favor either. It took only a jab. But then again, so Gilbert Burns, who was also kind of small for the division, for the welterweight division, it just took a jab for him from Usman to get the knockout as well. So there's no shame in falling to a jab. I myself, swear to God, everything I love on my health, I've put people to sleep with a jab. One jab, the flick of my wrist, I've closed people's eyes up. They balled up, cried, they got knocked out clean. They didn't cry for real, but, well, their wife cried. So, I don't know how to explain this any better than this should not be, the lines are not where they're at minus 215. They opened up at minus 215. They're still there. They haven't moved. You can get them at a plus 215 underdog price tag. So it's a great price tag. Give me 1 second, guys. Don't come back, name lady. You're fired. I never want to see you again. I'm sorry. Did we are we live? All right, YouTube, we're back again. I'm sorry for the third interruption. I'm firing everybody. Don't worry. The technician lady is gone.
Who's that?
There's a lot of ladies in this place that are not here today, after today. And don't ask me why I only have girls under my reign. I don't see it as like a company. I see like a dictatorship. I'm like a president. This is not like a business. This is like my own country, and I'm like a president, but not like a normal. I'm like a dictator president. I just run stuff around here. So
You were paying for that later.
Get that out of his mouth.
He did it by himself.
All right, guys, we're back on track. If we get interrupted again, I quit. I'm deleting my YouTube channel. You guys will never see me again. I'm joking. You know how many people are like, come on, let's go, let it go down again. Oh my God. All right, so back on track. We were talking about where did we leave off? Spartan against Andreas Michaelias against my underdog pick. Great value. He's at a plus 215 underdog. Pretty reasonable size, decent amount of value there. for my underdog, who should not be an underdog, to be quite honest. Like, what justifies it, dude? I get he's got power, but power doesn't translate into getting wins. I mean, what good is your power? A guy sitting at the bar has got power. He's got more power than half of the guys, on the roster. But do you think that the skills, the technique, the cardio, the endurance, all that stuff will not be able to prevail over somebody's just mere power? If it was only about power, this would not be an MMA organization. It would not be. It would be a tough man's contest or something like that. This is MMA. The skinny small guy, Royce Gracies, they can beat the Dan Severns, and so we've seen it happen in the history since the beginning of the MMA era. So this is no different. I expect this big meathead favorite to come in and get mollywopped and just dissected, picked apart. He's going to make so many mistakes, being the arrogant, cocky guy he is, thinking he can do flashy stuff. You'll notice, I even heard one of the commentators in one of his fights that he was not even winning. It was just like barely started. And the guy had done something, and then he connected with his first shot. It was like the first shot of the fight that landed for anybody, right? He already started doing that, like Muhammad Ali, showboating and like show off, like come on and get some type of a thing. Like, man, dude, you're not in the UFC yet. You haven't even won the fight or got near winning the fight. It's not even barely started, and you're already showing off and doing antics like that. Go try that in the UFC and ask Anderson Silva in the Chris Weidman fight. How did that work out for him? Or go ask Daniel Pineda versus Cub Swanson. How did that work out for him? Or just go find a million bloopers online about taunting gone wrong. This is a guy who doesn't show good IQ. He fell and he landed on his back, got the fight stopped against Bukauskas, Modestas Bukauskas, who was a favorite in that fight. Going into that fight, the odd makers deemed a guy like Bukauskas on his first fight in the UFC, they said was the favorite over this guy. Now why? Because he's got a loss by a guy like Brees. Tom Brees is not your ordinary fighter. He's not a Bukauskas, that's for sure. Modestas Bukauskas and Tom Brees, two different levels. So I just don't understand it. The length, the reach, the IQ, the strategy, and the cardio, the endurance, the patience, the less sloppy, unbalanced striking, which is huge. Because here's what's going to happen. I'm going to draw it off for you guys very simply. This guy's going to do one of his famous. There is now one fight of his you can watch where you're not going to find him almost falling over, and some of them he does fall over even. I've seen him fall down by himself. Nobody capitalized on it because it was the lower level. It's forgivable in the regional scene, especially when you're fighting an 18-year-old with a 0-1 record. So, but in this stage, you can't fall down and trip over yourself and expect not to get damaged, or somebody, like, especially with this guy's BJJ, his judo, his taekwondo is legit. I've seen him on ground. The guy works great from the guard. He doesn't let you back up easily. He may not be the strongest, but he uses a good positioning, and he knows how. And I've seen off of his back, Michailidis, he doesn't know what he's doing against stronger wrestlers, guys who are more better on the ground than he is. He tried to use a butterfly guard inside of the guard. He wanted to try to maneuver out of it as if he was going to win from his back, as if he was in denial. Either he has no IQ, no wrestling IQ and fighting IQ, or he was in denial. He thought he was going to be able to outmaneuver, out-grapple, do something as basic as put your foot over his knees and push out and be able to get out of a guy who's like a high level, like a Khabib chain wrestling, like Gregor Gillespie or Merab Deval, like a guy who's got that level of grappling and wrestling, you're gonna just assume that you can use a butterfly guard and work your way up. You're only gonna work your way up against a guy like that is if you get your back against a cage, or you get lucky, like the round is about to come to an end, and he tries to transition into a side mount or something, and you can find a quick gap out. But you're not going to do it through a butterfly guard, and you're not going to do it, So it took him some damage. He took a lot of damage before he realized, okay, I better go into full guard so I can protect myself. And hold him, push his hips down and hold him down so he can't just rain down on me with some punishment. Because the guy had postured up and just done some damage. Just shows like really bad IQ, man. Really doesn't have good wrestling, doesn't have good selections and decision making, and doesn't have the reach advantage, doesn't have the cardio advantage. And what did I tell you about the last guy who I mentioned all these additional advantages? Sekulic. I told you he had more advantages, more paths to victory than the Grant. And sure enough, 30-27 to him. I don't care what the judges say. My underdog cashed in my heart, in my mind. I'd rather be the guy who picked the wrong guy because he didn't cash in than pick the right guy who cashed in, but everybody saw he had not just lost, but got dominated. He almost got put away. He almost got submitted even. That was a 10-8 round according to what I'm told. When somebody finishes an opponent or damn near finishes him, look at how PFL rates their rounds. They give you up to 100 points. If you get close to a finish, you get 100 points, or 99 points, 98 points. They give you the maximum points. That's like a 10-8 for PFL. PFL is kind of onto something smart. If you're just doing ground and pound, or you're trying to lay and pray over your guy and you're using position over submission, but not nailing him with anything hard, or strikes are not really coming down and you're not hitting him with any haymakers or putting him in any submissions, if you're not getting close to, they won't even give you any score. You could even lose the round if you're not doing any damage or getting the fight close to being taken into your hands. So I kind of like that system a little bit better than what UFC does. But for the most part, when they're not trying to cheat us to beat us, when they're actually being fair, they know how to judge. We saw a very good decision with Jessica Penny and Lupita. That was a great decision. We saw a good decision with Saldana versus Jordan Griffin, who was trying to lay and pray, was doing everything he can to avoid the fight. Even the more active guy from the ground, even on his back, we saw was Saldana. So everybody was crying robbery because they all bet against him. They thought that the UFC veteran savvy Griffin, who I told you was not going to win because he had just renewed his contract. And if you renew your contract before going into a fight, you got 5 more fights on the deal, you're not going to be as motivated. You're not going to have as much incentive to try to work harder. Look at the difference between Anthony Pettis when he knew he was going into the open market, the free agency. Look at his performance against Alex Moreno. Moreno's performance was so impressive against Moreno, and look at his lackluster performance against that Codler guy. He's not even an MMA fighter. He's hardly an MMA fighter. He looked better than he's ever looked before, and he did mix it up and somewhat looked like an MMA. If you didn't know anybody, you would say he wasn't a good MMA fighter, but they try to give him an easiest walk in the park type of a fight to build his name in the PFL because they gave him a long contract. He's got a lot of fights lined up, and they already kind of pretty much pay him for it. He's on a salary. Pettis is not getting paid fight-by-fight basis anymore at PFL. They got him on a long-term schedule where he's already knowing who he's going to fight for the remainder of his contracts. They're already lined up for him. So he went in there knowing he's already got a contract. He's already got his money for the fights. He was not motivated. He didn't do anything right. He did everything wrong. He didn't even use a guy like Moreno, Alex Moreno. He just dominated and beat in the UFC, mind you. UFC, a best organization, highest platform. Moreno's got good accolades and attributes as a wrestler. He's a credentialed good wrestler. We've seen him wrestle and dominate Reese McKee. Reese McKee was looking like crap against Alex Moreno. And the ground game especially, he was dominating him. And then we saw levels to it because we saw Pettis use great wrestling. Even when he was getting the better in the exchanges on the feet, he resorted in the smarter, more safer, dominating positioning by using his maneuvers, by using his wrestling against Moreno, who he defeated impressively because he mixed it up, wrestling, and he made it a mixed martial arts match. Well, in his last fight, he, as the second biggest favorite of the card, a guy who everybody knows, skill for skill, his experience, his skill set would reign well over. He almost even finished after he started to get embarrassed and really wanted. He finally started to try a little bit, similar to like what we saw him do in the Stephen Thompson until the end of the fight. We were getting closer to the fight coming to an end after realizing, oh crap, I can't win any other way. He knocked Stephen Thompson out. Remember that? He was on his way to lose a decision. Well, in this case, he was doing the same thing. He almost came so close. Thank goodness that the guy, luckily for him, he's got a good chin. He ate some shots, and the size difference, the discrepancy between how big he was and how big he came in. And Pettis looked tiny compared to this guy. And his skill set is a boxer. The guy is a boxer for a long time. He transitioned from boxing to MMA. Why would you want to just stay on the feet and box all 3 rounds with a guy whose only skill set is boxing? You don't have a disadvantage anywhere else, and that's where you decide to keep it all 3 rounds. But against a good wrestler, a real MMA fighter like Moreno, the fight before that one, just barely a month or so before that, 3 months before that, you wanted to be a wrestler. You showed a good strategy. You had a motivation that you wanted to win it badly. That's because he was a free agent after that. He knew he was going to test the waters, and he needed his stocks to be risen. This time we saw what had happened. So the same applied with Jordan Griffin. And that's why I faded Jordan Griffin while everybody else was on that wagon, and they thought that he was going to beat the debut fighter. Because I usually don't like to bet on debut fighters. I have a rule. I don't usually put him in my parlays especially. I may put a single bet on him, but I don't parlay them. In this case, I parlayed Luis Saldana, and he rightfully won, but nobody understood the decision. Even Daniel Cormier, a fighter, former fighter, retiree, Olympian, former champion, talked about being as one of the greatest of all time. He didn't understand the decision, but I played it step by step, and I can tell you why he was supposed to win the decision. The judges, when they want to do right, when they want to be on top of their Q's, their P's and Q's, dot their I's and cross their T's and just be perfect, they can do it. They got it. They know what they're doing when they want to. But then there's other times where they just shouldn't even be on the same planet. You would expect them to not even be on the same continent as where the fight took place. Because Ray Charles, a blind man, would have seen better results and scores than what they gave for a fight that made no sense. Even in the first fight, that Ariane Carnelossi girl, that very tough girl against the Chinese Ronda Rousey girl, such a mismatch, and she was taken over quickly after the first round. She could have arguably said that she actually one judge gave Arnalossi 10-8 round in the first round, where if there was 10 more seconds, and here's why, the same reason why Saluki, the same night, same judges, gave Carnelossi Ariane a 10-8 round. Chris Lee's scorecard. Chris Lee is one of the most crooked judges, and even he couldn't do this to the girl because she was 10 seconds. She even said in her post-fight interview. Funny thing is, I posted it in the Patreon. I said my exact words, 10 seconds more in that first round, the fight would have came to an end. Her first sentence after the post-fight interview, after the fight and her post-fight was, if there was 10 more seconds, I would have finished that fight. She repeated exact word for word as what I said. But that was true. And that's why Chris Lee, as bad of a judge as he is, he couldn't deny her the 10-8 round. Same exact thing happened with Grant and Saluki. Not only did they not give him the 10-8 round, they said he lost the fight. More volume, more significant strikes, more submission, the only submission attempts, the only ground control, the only takedowns, the aggression, the forward control, pressure, everything was in his favor. And you're going to give the other guy the fight? I've never seen a robbery like that in my life, and I've seen some bad ones. I can give you like the Gamrot, the Guram. Even after the fight was over, he admitted that he lost that fight. He shouldn't have won it. The judges are crazy. He said that I don't know what fight the judges were watching, but the guy beat me. I shouldn't have won that. That was his post-fight interview. That fight was not as bad. Bobby Green, Thiago Moises, not as bad. John Jones versus Thiago Santos or Dominick Reyes, not as bad. This was by far the worst one because there were 10-8 rounds and they still gave the other guy the decision unanimously. All right, so let's just recap on this really quickly. We got my underdog is KB Bueller, and there's more than one or two, or there's several reasons from the cardio. Just go back and listen to all the things that I said. There's several reasons why he is the rightful favorite, but currently at plus 210, sitting at nice, good odds. And then that's the segment. I'm going to break these fights down. So every segment's going to have their own fighter and fighter breakdowns and predictions. So I'll be making another one for the channel. I don't ever do full card except for like maybe if it's somebody's birthday or Christmas presents and like holidays. I'm generous. I'll maybe do a full card. But other than that, you'll only see like an underdog of the week, sometimes a lock of the week if it's the same fight. Like once in a while, you'll see that my underdog of the week was also my lock of the week or fade of the week. So I'll sometimes do a double bubble. But in this case, nope. You got a plus 200 underdog. Be happy with that, all right? I'm just kidding. But today you're going to see some, if you're in the Patreon, you're going to see the lock of the week segment. Tomorrow's the full card breakdown segments as well. So good time to hit the Patreon up because May 1st event is still included in April's month. So whoever's in our Patreon inside the month of April, they're going to pay themselves back for the membership because not only will you get grandfathered in at the lower rate before they increase next month, but you're also going to get an event, one of the best events, the best values, the best underdogs, the best parlays, the props. Everything I'm going to do for this event is going to be huge. We're going to make a killing off of this May 1st card, and the bet slips are going to be coming out 3 or 4 days before, and I'm going to confirm them again after the weigh-ins. I do weigh-ins and observations for stare downs. If nothing has changed, I'll give you guys the green light to go ahead and lock it in, but you'll get the bet slips, my predictions, my parlays, my prop bets by 2 or 3 days before May 1st. So that's going to be included. The bet slips and the perks are for April, even though the event is not until May 1st. Keep that in mind. So the month is not over. It's still worth joining in. And we can talk about even prorating your month. So if you needed to join, I can talk to you about how you can prorate it and get reimbursed for not being here for the full month. All right, guys. Thank you for your time. You got my pick, KB Bueller. Good underdog for this card. Good. It was good. I have a lot of good reasons for picking him. It's not just because of value or something silly like that, like most handicappers pick fights because of. So if you can just go back into the segment, you'll see plenty of reasons. If you have any questions, concerns, you want to debate, respectfully debate or disagree with me, I'm happy to entertain those rebuttals and debates regarding the choice. I'd love to hear your picks and your reasonings in the comment section. And also don't forget to give us an idea of what name should I give the... We already got OGs, but that's for the patrons. The patrons are called OGs, and depending on their tiers and the level of membership that they're on or the length of time, I call some of them triple and quadruple. If you got the sweaters, you like this true original sweater. So we got a lot of merchandise actually. That anybody who receives merchandise, there's about out of 193. I got about 190 something Patreon members right now. We fell a little under 200. We were at over, if you count all the people that I block a lot of people for silly reasons sometimes, but for their own good or deservingly. But if it wasn't for the blocked people or the declined credit cards, because a lot of people forget to put money on their card, they use like a prepaid card and they forget to load it. So we end up losing them by not realizing that they didn't put money on their cards. Besides that, we should be like close to 300 members. The block list alone is pretty heavy. Just because people, they've been gambling. Gambling attracts some of the worst people. They've been gambling for so many years. They've been losing for years before I even met them. Before they ever came to me. I have a guy who tells me he'll pay me money, $1,000 a month, just to not let him place his own bets. He gave me his password, his username, and he said, I want you to place my bets for me, please. I'll pay you money. He doesn't trust himself. They're not able to control themselves. So they've been losing for so long that they feel like such losers for so long that nothing can make them happy. Nothing. Even when they win, they don't feel like they're winning. So they have that attitude that they're not positive, they're negative, and I don't tolerate that. This is a place like a business. I run it like a business. Everybody needs to leave their baggage and bad days. Check that at the door before you walk into the office. And if you walk in the office properly, I'll put you in a nice penthouse suite, be respectful to you, make jokes with you, communicate, talk fights, have fun. It'll be a great experience. You'll make a lot of money. Like anything else, you go to a job where it makes good money, you gotta act right or they take you out. That's what I'm gonna do to anybody who doesn't act right. Or if they're not doing what I'm supposed to like some people are just not I can't help you. You're the type that even if I tell you how to do something, you go against what I tell you to do and you keep losing and then saying like, I don't know how to control myself. Like at that point, I got to make a decision for you that's in your own best interest and not be selfish. As much as I would like your money, I will have to probably choose not to keep you around so that you don't feel enabled to do what you're doing. All right, sorry we got off topic, guys. This was a Dr. Phil moment. I'm going to put that in the timestamps. Dr. Phil moment, so you can come straight to it if you're interested in that kind of stuff. You got it, baby. I'm just kidding. All right, thanks for joining me in this segment. We'll have another one today, tomorrow, who knows. Never, if you don't hit the like, you don't hit the subscribe, you'll never see my faces again. I'm a Gemini, so I got two faces if you didn't know about that. Watch this. My nieces used to love that. They used to crack. My baby niece, if I do this, she'll be rolling and kicking and stomping on the ground, hysterically laughing. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the thumbs down. Do whatever you guys want. Just do something, all right? Do some. Usman, in memory of Kamaru Usman's last opponent, Jorge Masvidal. His soul is floating in the air with the Conor McGregors, the Frankie Edgars. Rest in peace to Super Necessary. Okay, we've got everything talked about we needed to talk about. We got nothing left to do but you don't got to go home, but you can't stay here. I'm waiting for my name girl to hit the stop button. I'm going to have to do it myself, guys. I try to stall as long as I could. She's away from her desk. She's going to get fired.